I'd like to call this meeting to order and ask that everybody either turn off or mute your cell phones or other electronic devices. And I've asked Trustee Coladarchi to lead us this evening in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jack.
Sure.
Okay. Hold on here just a minute. Let me get my... Go. Okay, first item of business is quorum. Kristen, would you please check quorum for the next upcoming meetings?
Yes. Are there any trustees that are unavailable for the August 4th regular meeting?
Kristen, that for me, that will depend on virtual or in chambers. And
so if it's virtual, you can attend?
Yes.
I believe we will be virtual on August 4th.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so we have a quorum. What about the August 11th study session? This is the Cityscape study session.
Kristen, we aren't going to be having that because I'm not going to hit full attendance.
Okay, so that will be posted.
We're having some difficulty connecting.
Okay, and then August 18th regular meeting.
Yes.
Okay, so then we have a quorum.
Ryan, you got to mute yourself.
It looks like he is now.
Thanks. Oh, I love this. Okay, item 4 is public comment. This is the time of the evening where we get to hear from people from the community or elsewhere who wish to share their short thoughts with Village Council. And Kristen, do you have any public comments this evening?
We do not have any public comment that was provided via email for general public comment. We do have comments for specific agenda items, which will be read during those agenda items. We do have members of the audience that we did poll to see if there were any members of the audience that had comments that were general comments not related to the agenda items. And I believe Brian is giving some technical assistance right now, but that the members of the audience want to speak directly to the issues on the agenda, not any general public comment. And we do have Trustee Apatow joining us.
Great.
Thank you. Sorry about the delay.
Okay, thanks, Kristen. Well, then we'll move forward. Item 5 is the reports. I'll work my way around my screen. Jack, any report this evening?
No report.
Penny, any report this evening?
Yeah, I finally got online. Sorry. I tell you what, every week it's something different. Sorry about that. Thank you.
That's a good report. Thank you, Penny.
Yeah, great report.
Bob, any report?
No report, Chris.
Rob, any report?
No report tonight.
You need to unmute yourself, Rob.
Might help.
There you go. Andy, any report?
No report.
Great. I think I got everybody. Everybody keeps jumping around on me, so if I missed you, just let me know. Village Attorney, any report?
No report tonight.
Assistant Village Manager, any report?
No report tonight.
Thank you. And President, I do have a couple items I'd like to report on. The first one was last Friday. Actually, there were two separate meetings sponsored by the Great Lakes Alliance, which included mayors from all up and down Lake Michigan and inland mayors who are users of Lake Michigan water, to talk about issues with water quality and shoreline erosion and the need for potential federal assistance in helping these communities out, maintaining their infrastructure necessary to deliver safe and healthy potable drinking water. So on last Friday, we met with State Congressman Schakowsky and State Congressman Schneider and shared our need for $65 million in water main improvements and another almost $100 million for lead water line services. Then this afternoon, we met with U.S. Senators Duckworth and Durbin to discuss fundamentally the same issues, helping them understand how important it is for us folks here along the shoreline of Lake Michigan to maintain our water service, and looking to the future, being able to provide water to inland users who are currently relying on declining aquifers. So that was an interesting meeting, and I put in our request for a lot of the money that we've already programmed in for years to come, and hopefully they heard what we were asking for, and that'll bear some fruit at some point in the coming years. Thirdly, today I believe, Bob, you were on that call, right? Bob and I were on the call today with Judge Allegretti regarding the deplorable conditions on the One Winnetka site. Along with Bob and I, there were representatives from Hadley School for the Blind, 711 Oak Street, the Chamber of Commerce, and other interested parties. In total, there was probably 30 to 40 people on the Zoom call with Judge Allegretti. To say I'm displeased and disappointed would be an understatement. Judge Allegretti seems to have decided to show a preference for a foreign investment group over the needs and the concerns of the residents of the village of Winnetka. He wasn't interested in really hearing from anybody. He did hear from one resident from 711 Oak Street, but didn't allow him to complete his thoughts as far as the conditions he sees firsthand looking out his window. I'm going to continue to monitor these court hearings, and every chance I will get to share our concerns with the judge, I will do so. Regretfully, business as usual at the Circuit Court of Cook County, and very, very disappointing that the needs and the desires of our residents are looked over in favor of a Canadian bank group that is seeking nothing but to minimize losses they took on a very, very, very bad business deal. So more to come on this, and Bob, thanks for joining in and lending a little more gravity to the conversation. So that's all my comments for the day. Bob, do you want to add anything on that, or?
I think you summed it up. The village isn't asking for a whole lot right now, just to keep it safe and somewhat out of disrepair. And he didn't seem too much interested in that. So that was disappointing. I agree.
Is there any appeal? Or is he the judge, jury, and?
No, there was no decision today. So we'll push it to a hearing in which he'll have to make a final decision. But today was a status hearing for to try to push him to get the property owners to do more.
I will say Andrew Fisk from Peter's office did an outstanding job pleading our case. He really was forceful, shared with the judge concerns, and did his best to get us in front of him. But again, he didn't seem too interested in hearing what people had to say. He was more interested in simply kicking the can down the road and blaming his inability to act on the federal courts, which is where the property is residing. So more to come. Go ahead.
First of all, there's some weird background noise going on. I'm not sure where that is. That's odd. Anyway, were there any standards he seemed to be interested in?
Nope. none that I could discern. It was really more that he doesn't feel it's right to make these people expend money since the building is going to be ultimately demolished. And he can't understand why we would throw good money after bad simply to make the building look better and remediate the effects that it's having on the business district. It's completely,
That's amazing.
very, very, very sad statement
Wow.
on how this court system is working right now.
Huh.
So our next hearing is in, well, he tried to kick it to September and Andrew tried to force him to an earlier date, but I think it's around the second week of September before we can get back in front of him again.
Correct.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah,
Remarkable.
regretful. Anyway, we'll move on. Item number 6 is approval of the agenda. Does any trustee wish to remove an item on the consent agenda for a separate vote? Raise your hand if you would like to. Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the final form of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Apatow,
Yes.
trustee Dearborn,
Yes?
trustee Lampier,
Yes.
trustee Caladarchi,
Yes.
trustee Kripe,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
trustee Swerk.
Yes, and sorry I was late. We have no Comcast.
Okay, I'm not the only one who's having a hard time. Okay.
Oh,
Thanks.
we just lost John, so that's what you get for bad mouthing Comcast, John.
I'm here.
They're listening.
Comcast says 8 o'clock to have it fixed.
Okay, moving forward, the consent agenda, the
I think my
assistant
Comcast
village-
died as we speak.
Yeah, I see it, Andy. It's not doing too good. The assistant village manager will read the items on the consent agenda.
Under item A, we have approval of village council minutes
Over my other,
for June
I know you offer a
16,
minute, but I'll be back.
2020.
Okay, thanks, Andy.
Approval of the council minutes for July 7th, 2020. Item B, approval of the warrant list dated July 3rd through July 16th, 2020 in the amount of $789,823.25. Item C, resolution number R46-2020, approving a change order number 10 to the contract with BMAX Incorporated for electric distribution system work adoption.
Thanks, Kristen. All right, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by omnibus vote?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second?
Okay, roll call vote?
Trustee Swerk,
yes.
trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Caladarchi,
Yes.
trustee Dearborn,
Yes?
trustee Apatow,
Yes.
trustee Lampier.
Yes.
Motion carries, thank you. All right, we'll move forward to ordinances and resolutions. Item 8A, ordinance number MC3 2020, amending sign regulations to allow display case signs. This is up for introduction this evening only. This amendment to the village sign code was requested by a local business owner. Community, if you remember, we heard from Teresa back in, I think, February. There seemed to be some traction and thinking it was a good idea. And David moved it through the process and is here tonight to walk us through that issue. David, go ahead. David?
Yes. Pulling up the slide presentation. So as President Rin said, we had a request to consider allowing display case signs. You may think of them as typically a restaurant menu board sign. You'd see them on the exterior of a building for a restaurant, and they would display their menu on the exterior of the building rather than in the windows. So a display case sign is what our code would consider a changeable copy sign. That is that the sign message isn't fixed, that it can change. We do allow changeable copy signs for other uses other than commercial uses, and we allow limited changeable copy signs for commercial uses. Form of a gasoline price sign is a sign we allow. There's some small incidental signs. It needs to be less than a square foot or less. And then portable menu board signs, which you see out on the sidewalk in our commercial areas. So staff reviewed regulations from other communities and came up with a proposal that we presented to the design review board. We looked at these communities and others. Glencoe, for instance, doesn't allow changeable copy signs. Northville doesn't specifically call for them in their sign regulations, but apparently their architectural review board would have the authority to allow such a sign on an individual review. But we went through and looked at standards that these different communities had and put a proposal together that focused on allowing these signs without having to go through a review process. Given recent discussions by the design review board, you know, are there opportunities we can do that? So we presented a proposal to allow them for just restaurants was the proposal we presented. It would be one display case sign per business. That what they could display in the case would be related to the business. So a menu, specials, or if an event was occurring. And we had a limit on the number of times the sign could change during the day. And I'll just stop there. The design review board thought that other businesses should be allowed the opportunity to have such a sign. So they don't recommend that it be limited to just food and beverage services. Therefore, they didn't limit what could be displayed in the display case. And they thought that limiting it to 2 or fewer times a day was too limiting. So the proposal before you, by definition, a changeable copy sign, all types cannot change more than 8 times per day. They also then talked about the physical limitations, or they reviewed the proposal. They looked at the size area, the sign area, and thought it should be 6 feet or less. Given that it's at a pedestrian level, they wanted to limit how far it would project from the wall. So they limited to 4 inches or less. And given that it's a pedestrian-oriented sign, it should be no taller than 6 feet, so that as a pedestrian goes by, they can easily view it. That it should be an enclosed case. They did not favor the backlighting of the signs so that the signs would be illuminated from behind, but an external illumination would be okay, whether inside the case shining down on the sign or it's outside of the case shining on the sign. And then in terms of having it to be administrative review, they put in some standards such as the placement of it cannot interfere with architectural details or windows, and that the case should match the exterior storefront frame color or be compatible with the overall materials and colors of the facade. So at the June 18th meeting, they reviewed this. 2 members spoke. 2 members of the public spoke, both in support of the idea. In the end, the board recommended approval by a vote of 4-0. and those recommendations have been incorporated into the ordinance before you. There is one change we added since the meeting to make clear that we're not looking, in terms of a changeable copy sign, we're not looking for individual letters to be posted in and out, but we're looking for, a sheet of paper or two that would be posted within the sign, and not the sign being made up of individual letters. So that language has been incorporated into the ordinance. So I'd be happy now or later to answer any questions. And given that the Design Review Board unanimously recommended approval, we did notice that you may take action on waiving introduction and adopting, but again, that's up to the council.
We won't be doing that tonight, David.
Okay.
Okay, before we weigh in with any questions, Brian, is there anybody who's signed in who wishes to speak on this item?
I will have to go through the call-in users here to check on a few of these folks to see if they'd like to speak.
Please.
Call-in user number 2, calling from the 773-391 phone number. Would you like to speak to this matter regarding sign code amendment?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you. Call-in user number 3, calling from the 312-501 phone number. Do you have any comment on the sign code amendment that you'd like to add? Hearing none. Call-in user number 4, calling from the 847-899 telephone number. Do you have any comment you'd like to add on the sign code amendment matter?
Yes, I do.
Please
Can
go
you
ahead.
hear me?
We can hear
Okay.
you.
This is Terry Dason. I'm the executive director of the Manette Northville Chamber of Commerce, and I was on the meeting, and I think this is a wonderful idea for our businesses, especially during this time that we're in, where they could walk by, because people are walking a lot through our village, and it would be nice for them to know what each business had to offer them, so that they could see a menu of items that the business offers to the community, and maybe that would generate more business for each of the brick and mortar businesses that we have in our community. So I support this.
Thanks, Terry.
Moving to the next round of callers. Call-in user number 5, calling from the 847-814 telephone number. Do you have any comment on this matter that you'd like to add?
I do not.
Thank you. Call-in user number 6, calling from the 312-343 telephone number. Do you have any comment you'd like to add at this time?
I do not.
Thank you. Dan Burns, do you have any public comment you'd like to add? No, Dan Burns. Al Tillman, do you have any comment you'd like to add on this matter?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. William Hernandez, do you have any comment you'd like to add on this matter?
Thank you.
Thank you. And last member, Kathy Rintz. Do you have any comment?
I can guarantee you she does not.
She does not have any comment. Okay. Okay. That concludes the call-in users.
That was painful. Okay, we can move on with trustees' questions. Rob Apatow, please go ahead. John, I'll get you next.
Thanks. A comment that'll lead to questions. I guess I first want to say I'm as pro-business as it can get, and I will do anything within reason to help our businesses, attract more businesses, but help the businesses that are here in the trenches succeed. I guess I'm looking at the proliferation of signs in the village over the last couple of years, and I'm not quite sure how letting every business, whether it be a bank, a nail shop, a real estate office, put up outdoor signage is going to do anything but clutter up the village and the look. I understand the restaurants. I think that's fine. I think that's good because people do want to see before they walk in a restaurant for sure what's there. But letting the expansion of this to every single business is troubling to me, because I think if you look at that many different outdoor signs on every single business, I think that's going to look like it's going to look pretty bad. I came in the village yesterday or the day before, and I saw some of the new Park District signs, and one of the signs was buy Winnetka Park District and golf merchandise at the golf shop, and that's what you see when you come into Winnetka right now. So I think the proliferation of signage that this would exacerbate. I'm fine with the restaurants doing it, but I don't understand how it went from restaurants to every single shop has the ability to put a sign and change it up to 8 times a day. I think it becomes a free for all, and I think it will look really bad. And it'll have so little impact on the business that, I'm happy with any other thing we can talk about, but I think this proliferation of signage that this would bring on would be pretty troubling to me. That's it.
John, you had some comments.
Sure. First of all, I do concur with Rob on the, not sure what the reasoning was behind providing for all businesses. I really think this is meant to be a food service type signage that is common in other areas. So I kind of agree with that. I have a question for David. Of the 4 DRB members, can you tell me who was at the meeting? Is that something you have handy or no? Or who voted for it?
The chairman, Kirk Albinson, Paul Constant, Brad McLean, and Maggie Miners were present.
Good. Okay. Great. One concern I have, ideally, like I said, I like to keep it to restaurants only or food service. I think part of the application process, as someone applies for the sign, really need to have the building owner signature, because I don't want any fights over and saying they took my spot. If it's a building that might have a couple tenants and only perhaps one place to put a sign. So kind of keep that in mind to see if there needs to be any modifications if other people agree. And as far as the lighting of the sign, have you thought about, or has anyone thought about, possibly LED lighting? People now have outside TVs. It could actually be the size requirement of your sign, which can be a black background, letters automatically change, or you can change them daily. So that's something we should consider too, just to make sure if we're going to change this ordinance, kind of keep up on the times as far as technology.
Excuse me, Chris.
Yep.
If I could interrupt for one moment. Teresa stepped across into Village Hall. She is caller number 3, Brian. And we seem to be having some technical difficulties. So she does want to speak to the public comment, and we were unable to hear her. So can you please unmute caller 3 while she's standing outside my door to make sure that we resolve the technical difficulty?
Oh, okay. Caller 3 is unmuted.
Hey, Brian.
Teresa?
Can you hear me? Yep.
We can hear you.
Okay, very good. So I can wait till whoever was speaking to finish their thought.
No, I was basically finished. Go right ahead, thanks.
So this is Teresa who submitted it.
And I guess I have a couple comments, but beforehand, Chris, if you could help me understand why it's going to be introduction only, just so I understand the thought behind that decision.
I received a request from a trustee earlier today to put this through the two-step process, and in deference to anybody who requests. The problem is if we have somebody who is not favoring waiving introduction, then we have to go through the two-step process, Teresa.
Okay, I'm just asking for clarification other than
Sure.
no, we won't be doing that. Okay, so I have a couple of comments. One is, it's been 5.5 months. And I appreciate the thought that we want to support the businesses, but thus far, this really would be the first thing. And the request was never submitted for restaurants only. I'm a retailer. It has never been submitted for restaurants only. That's the first thing. Second thing is, based on the signage that I've had, I can tell you putting it at eye level is more effective. Third, I don't think every single business is going to do it. I think some will and restaurants will. The fourth is, it's not the same signage as what the Park District is doing, which is large banners. So it's not anywhere comparable to that. And then the other I would say is that the conversation or the comment that just delves into about what type of sign, et cetera, was covered at the Design Review Board. And that it was very inspirational to hear Eric Albertson say that the Design Review Board should be doing everything and anything they can to help the businesses. And that's why they made it, they kept it to the exact request rather than going through electronic display cases and some of the other things, of just keeping it to this. And that, he made it very clear that he understands the pandemic is going to go to 2020. So I don't really see how supporting the businesses, allowing them to have a professional looking sign that is reflective of Winnetka is supportive of the businesses. So that's what I'm stunned that after taking 5.5 months to get to this point of, to get to this point. It's 5.5 months. So I would just say I'm taken aback on the whole experience. So I'm done. No, please don't talk over me. So I'm done with my comment, but those are my input. And that I think it needs to be a realistic conversation, and that the Design Review Board went through very carefully the requirements and making it so that it would not be equivalent to an Winnetka Park District sign.
So,
thank you.
Teresa, can you hang on? It's Andy Kripe. Are you
Sure.
still? So I do favor your proposal in its original form. We had not finished our discussion. We were just getting started. But I do want to just touch on a few things. I think Kirk is right. We do need to do what we can. I think I appreciate also though what Robert's saying, the concern about the signage. I don't think though the signs that we might be seeing right now are the ones that we're talking about with your proposal, which if I understand it correctly, and David, if you could help me just get my head around this, what we're doing is we're approving a process where people would have a designated place for changeable signs. And we would allow that, but it still goes through some sort of review before they go ahead.
It would not under the current proposal. It would
Okay,
not go through a review.
Okay, it just has to meet the design specifications in the ordinance.
Correct.
Yeah, and I'll speak to it more, but I'm fine with it. I think it's a good proposal. I think one of the challenges right now, and one of the reasons we are seeing more signs, is because things are happening so fast. Whether it's the city of Chicago announces a travel ban with like 4 hours notice, things are happening so fast that it's not realistic for small business owners to update websites, to get the word out. And being able to throw out a sign or update a sign really quickly is super important. I actually, in my morning walk, now that I don't work downtown, I walk by all of our stores each morning and I look to see if taped up any like updates on what they're doing. You know, I religiously walk by the bookstall just to see, you know, when we might be able to get back in there and browse a little bit. And so I think this isn't just a tool to help the business owners. I think it's an important tool to help the residents. You know, if we've got concerns about other things that seem to be more like clutter, I think we should address those. But I think this is the time to loosen things up. I had two questions. I think we should be open to the idea of LED, you know, displays, LCD display or LED displays. Maybe that's a separate thing since it wasn't in this proposal. You know, it saves people the time of like, you know, not everybody's got a graphic artist and a massive printer to crank this crap out. It's so much easier to just, you know, do something on a screen. So I think that's something we ought to be thinking about. I'm not clear on why we even care how many times a day somebody changes what it says. And was there, and maybe there was a discussion, I just missed it. David, is there kind of a rationale for that, or like the 8 times?
Well, the 8 times is trying to, this gets to your issue of an LED sign, which would be considered an animated sign under our current regulation. So the code, that's an existing standard trying to regulate animation of a sign. And so when the code was written, it was listed as 8 times a day.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what. So I guess because I'm not concerned about that. Maybe that's why I don't see the. You know, and look, take everything I say with a grain of salt. I wouldn't be opposed to someone walking around the village in a gorilla suit right now, and you can use that against me later. I think we got to do what we can. Let's not be so precious about our village. People need practical information. If we've got concerns about things getting away, real ugly, let's deal with that. But I don't know. I think that's a good proposal. Anyway,
Chris?
that's all I've got to say.
Chris?
Yes, Penny.
Pardon me if I'm jumping in here out of line. It sounds to me like we have 2 different issues going here, and maybe this is part of kind of the distress that I'm hearing right now with Therese, that one of the issues is providing that given the current situation, there is more of a need for businesses to have signs. So, you know, to update people on what's going on. So perhaps we need to consider a temporary allowance for businesses to post more signs than they normally would. And that we're providing a public service by doing that. I think that, you know, these kinds of permanent signs on the sides of the building that we're talking about will take a while to get them made and installed. You know, it's not going to be a rapid answer to the problem. So I would suggest that we consider 2 separate things. One is allowing businesses to temporarily put up signs in their windows that would normally not fall, you know, would not be acceptable. And then we separately consider this more permanent issue because it is different than what we had talked about. We really truly had just talked about restaurants, and there are a lot of questions I think we need to think about. You know, if there are businesses on second floors, do they get to put one on? I mean, it is potentially more complicated than we had initially thought about. And hearing Therese and other businesses that want to put up signs, can we consider that separately, sort of a temporary allowance? So I'm just bringing it up. I have other questions relative to this particular proposal, but.
Well, go ahead and continue, Penny.
So anyway, that's my short-term question. I don't know if we want to talk about that first before we get into the details of the DRB proposal.
I do have a question. If we approve this, and my issue, Penny, was Andy, and I get the why not just let it happen. If you have 100 different businesses putting up their interpretation of what is good taste and what, I know it's within guidelines, and some of it will be informational, some will be advertising. At night, if the signs are illuminated, some may look like Comiskey Park.
Right.
Are we looking at a voltage that they have to stay with? I mean, all these little things that seem so trivial, it's going to look like hell.
Well, and not only that, but these signs, these signs will be permanent. And so that, I mean, the cases will be permanent. So over time, I mean, it's not something that's going to happen next week, but over years, the aggregate of allowing these cases and what are they going to look like can have an effect. Similarly, it's not only an issue of can you can change them how many times a day. What happens to cases that are never changed? They're out of date, they're faded, they look bad. Will we have any ability to affect that? So I think given the scope of the proposal that's coming back, I think it's a little more complicated than what we had initially proposed. And to provide Therese and other businesses, can they do something else in the meantime that would be temporary signage rather than this permanent kind of display case that we're talking about?
Thoughts on that?
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I can add more. So now after hearing other people talk, I think if it goes to not just a food service, I think there should be at least an administrative permit process to make sure it does somewhat comply as far as location, architecture, not blocking the storefront, not going over some architectural detail. And I really think now that I look at it, 6 square feet is what the summary says. 6 square feet is pretty big. If we're just really trying to get a menu in there, look at some of the pictures that David included as examples. And look at some of the downtown areas. I was looking at street views on Google Earth. You might be an 8.5 piece of paper wide, so maybe a foot wide over the frame, and maybe 2 feet or 30 inches high is all you need. Again, it's supposed to be not for drive-by people to be able to read the sign with 8-inch letters. It's people walking, kind of peruse the restaurant menu before they go in. So I think the size could have a big factor.
Yep.
And I still think there should be a permit so that someone does have control. That's it.
I'll just, this might be one of those deals where we just don't agree, but I'll just kind of respond a few observations or comments. First, I think every store in the village right now has taped up all over the place and it just doesn't look good. I would rather have kind of nice display cases where that's the designated spot as opposed to kind of a sun faded piece of paper, scotch tape to the window. And let's be honest, no one in this village is going to be going and knocking on a business telling them to take down one of those signs that's up right now. No one. That would be insane.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about here is, something that would require an investment. It does, I guess, involve a question of the taste of the different business owners. But that, I think, goes to the heart of the whole capitalistic system. The other thing I would say, though, on that point is, because I don't hold myself out as a good judge of taste at all, I think our design review board has some exceptionally gifted design professionals on it, and they all agreed. So, and I regard them very highly. I mean, they're good at what they do. If we had some heart palpitations about this, I do think what John suggested might be a possible kind of way to resolve it, which is to say there's an administrative approval process. Yeah, you approve the thing as is. People just submit a picture of what it is they're planning to put up to make sure it conforms, and it just is subject to staff approval to ensure that it conforms. So we don't have people spending money. I would hate to have a store owner go and invest a ton of money on one of these things, and then we come along and say it doesn't conform. So I think that kind of an administrative approval process might address some of the heartburn that I'm hearing, but I think it might also be helpful in avoiding problems down the road. It's better to be clear up front than argue it later. But that's all I would say. Again, I'm coming at it from maybe a different viewpoint.
What about, where are we in terms of the sandwich board signs?
We've released Penny during the duration of the pandemic. We've released regulations on the sandwich boards and are allowing businesses to put those up wherever they see fit.
You know, I think that those are really effective in terms of drawing attention to, you know, I mean, when you drive down the street, you see them, you know, you can see them when you're walking. I'm really glad that those are allowed. And I think that that is, you know, it's great. They're easy to change. You can read them from far away or close up. So, you know, relative to whatever it is you need right now in terms of the, you know, surface area to provide information to customers on a, you know, something you can change. I mean, that's a really effective, in fact, that's probably way more effective of a tool than something that you have to get out of your car and walk over to the side of the wall to see. And again, on a long-term basis, I think that these display cases are really interesting, but in the short term, the sandwich boards are a great communication tool. So I'm not sure why the sandwich board, as well as allowing signs in people's windows, and some of them could be nicer rather than just hand lettered, but whatever, you know, why that's not meeting the need. I'm not clear on that.
Technically, we don't allow sandwich boards.
I know.
We just allowed it right now, but
right.
You know.
No, I know. But I mean, if the question is, we need to let people know right now what's going on, I think that the sandwich board is a really effective tool. And, you know, that may even be worth reconsidering for permanent use, because it really, you know, catches the eye. And I don't know. I mean, I'm definitely, well, I don't know. I think that I want to know a little bit more and be able to go out and consider what buildings are going to look like. If every building over time, like within 10 years, every building has all these cases up and multiple cases up, what's it going to look like? I don't know. We don't really have any samples of what they would be. I think there's one. So I don't know. And I'd be interested in having a conversation with the DRB, just to know, understand a little more. What?
I would too. I would
Yeah.
too, Penny. And
I just want to understand their thinking a little more and maybe have a dialogue. I'm not sure if they consider the issues that we're thinking about or not. I don't know. So I think, you know, and I hear the question about the immediate need, and I'm totally in support of that, whatever we can do to support the businesses right now. But, you know, let's face it, these signs are going to take a while to design, build, and then put up. So it's not going to, you know, it's not something that's going to happen within a week or two. And I agree.
Fortunately, COVID's not going away in a week or two either.
Yeah. You know what I mean. But
a lot of those wall signs, you could go on the internet and buy one and have them tomorrow. Seriously,
what do they look like? I don't know what they look like.
That's how easy they are.
Are they good looking? Are they not? I don't.
Well, as long as they're 6 square feet, they meet the ordinance. That's where I think we need administrative approval.
Those are some of the
quality or quantity, or, you know, because you could buy one online. You have it tomorrow.
Those are some of the.
Since I'm not in the design business, I don't know what those look like. So I'd love to see examples. And
look in your packet. There's a couple examples of pictures.
Yeah, there were a couple. Is this what you're talking about? That one?
We haven't heard from Bob yet. I'd like to hear what he has to think about this.
Sorry.
Well, when this came up in February, which was pre-COVID, I think we were all sort of thinking this was restaurant, food service, good grapes, you know, that type of thing. And it's kind of gone to a different level. So I understand Andy's position on this. I understand Rob's position. I agree that there has to be some oversight, whatever we end up doing. Andy, to your point about the DRB having good taste, I agree totally, but they won't be reviewing every sign that goes up. You know, they have set the standards that it should have the same facade and so on, but you know how things can slip a little bit along the way. So I think there needs to be some oversight. You know, I don't know how optician stores and other, you know, maybe Noah's Ark would, you know, they could probably benefit from this. I can understand it, but I think we've got to make sure we don't create a beast on this thing with signs all over, as Rob noted. So the oversight is important. Again, I envision this initially just as restaurants and good grapes and places like that. But I see the need elsewhere if it's done tastefully. And we have, if you go by and all of a sudden there's nothing in the sign, and you know, it's starting to look a little disheveled and old and worn, we need the ability to do something about that. And I think right now we don't have that in this ordinance. So I favor, I guess, more than I thought initially, but I also want to see the oversight that has some teeth in it.
What would you all think about, the problem with DRB is they only meet once a month. And if you miss their meeting, it could be 60 days before you even get an answer. I mean, this might be a situation where staff review would be sufficient, since DRB was pretty prescriptive as far as what the overall look and the placement of these should be. And I think, I know, David, it's adding one more thing to your plate or to your department's plate, but it seems to me that would be a way to expediently field these requests and still have eyes on them without putting them through this whole formal DRB process. I mean, if they lose the quorum, or if there's a PD application coming up down the pipe, this could take, several months before somebody gets heard for a simple sign box. And with respect to, being available to every business, what I worry about is real estate offices using this to promote homes that they're selling on top of what they're already hanging in their window. And, banks potentially, displaying different financial investments and enticements to open accounts in their places of business as well. So, there's a little bit more here than I think meets the eye. And the question is this something that we want to try to tailor and deliberate on tonight? Or do we want David to bring it back at the next meeting with maybe some refinements after he's heard what you've said, and see if we are getting a little bit closer to the middle?
The only thing about that, Chris, is, I think it's a slam dunk for the establishments that we thought about in February. I mean, I hate to hold them up in the process because we don't know how to handle the banks and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So, boy, to put a nice wood frame sign or whatever outside of Toco or whatever, have at it, as far as I'm concerned. So I don't want to hold this thing hostage, but I would think that we can get there pretty quick, allowing those businesses that we really thought about initially to get going on it.
Maybe we could just say that any businesses in the C2 district that didn't require a special use permit are available for doing this sort of thing, which would take out the banks, would take out the realtors, would take out the nail salons, would take out a lot of those uses that we otherwise would not want to have displays out for anyway.
The administrative review, I would think, through community
administrative review, yeah.
Yeah,
that's a great idea. One other thing, if you walk around right now, everybody's got these banners, I mean, like, they're huge and they are ugly, legitimately. I mean, just they're massive. And it seems to me if we're going to have this thing that gives people this designated place, we may want to include in this, if your ability to have one of these boxes or whatever means you're not going to be hanging like banners and stuff. And it's I think about, we're looking at this as this is going to proliferate signage. I actually think this is going to reduce it, but maybe we need to actually be explicit about that, so that people have a designated spot for their notices. I mean, if you've all seen them. I mean, literally, you can't even see in most of our store windows right now because they're just. And I get it. So I would just throw that out there too. But Chris, I really like that idea of, if you said it's for all uses, basically it's all uses of right in the C2 district.
Right.
Yeah. And then subject to administrative review. And then maybe part of that administrative review is also a review of any other notices or banners or advertisements hanging in the window to make clear that this will be the designated spot and that only this spot.
That's going to be tough to do. I mean, if and guys, I spent a lot of my career in retail. for a lot of 40,000 florists around the world, and Anheuser-Busch and Quaker. So I get this, and I think it's, I mean, if you're looking for impact, what you can do in your store window that is big and can draw attention is going to do a lot more for you than a small sign outside of it. And I doubt they're going to try and say, well, I won't advertise my windows if I get a sign. I mean, it's going to be really hard to regulate, and I don't think we have the right to do that either. I just think and I kind of agree with Bob, there are some slam dunks in here, but I still think things like, and I'm happy to talk to the design review board, because I know most of those people, 6x6 sign, as John was saying, it's a big sign.
No,
Wait a second.
6 feet.
6 square feet.
6 square.
2 by 3.
2 feet by 3 feet.
Right, no, I get
Even
that.
that's pretty big.
For what you're trying to accomplish, it becomes an advertising board versus an information sign. And I think and the lighting is also, are they allowed to be lit at night? Are they, and there's just a lot of things that this creates that I'm just curious with the DRB, if they actually really consider all those features. It's just, I'm not questioning what their intentions were. I think all of our intentions are to make this thing happen in a tasteful way for certain businesses.
Right.
Well, John, I'll let you go in a second. I just want to point out, Rob, the lighting was addressed in the ordinance, and that it's supposed to be indirect lighting, nothing that's signed internal to the map, nothing that's backlit or that shines outwardly.
Well, I'm with you. I appreciate that, Chris. And my point was that can mean a lot of things, and one can be incredibly bright. And it could shine. You can see it from a block away, and others will be like restaurants are very dimly lit, enough for you to see when you walk by.
Okay, John.
Right. So, in an effort to kind of get this moving forward with what the original intent was, and I kind of what thing with Bob mentioned, it's restaurants or the Good Grapes type store that is more intimate, I guess, and people walking by would actually read a sign. I would be careful with all businesses, and even if it's not a approved use, some of those places are probably approved because they've been there so long. And I'm just looking down Chestnut, not to pick on a business, Kelleher Luggage, the World Traveler Luggage Store. They would really have probably no reason to put one up there, nor would they have any room to put one when you look at Google Earth. They've only got like 8 inches between their windows. So I'm not sure that would even be necessary. So again, to keep it moving, let's maybe focus in on the Good Grapes type store, how we define that in restaurants, and let's get that going or get that process moving. We can always add to it as we further discuss. So all of a sudden, this 5 months doesn't turn into 4 more months.
I agree. I just want to remind everybody, we have a really meaty agenda this evening, and some pretty challenging topics to deal with after this. So I would like to get some sort of direction. I'm more inclined to have David kind of mine out of this conversation what he can. Maybe have some offline discussions with each of you individually. Come back with something that seems to coalesce around some of the ideas you have. Because John, a good example is trying to pick through uses and define them, and then modify this ordinance would be a nightmare. And I don't think it would be doing Peter any service as well as anybody else. But it seems to me that if we find something, now that we've got this out on the table, we can coalesce around some fundamental concepts in the coming week or two. We can bring this thing back and then look to introduce and adopt at the same time. And we wouldn't have lost anything. Penny, I see you're getting a little uncomfortable with that.
No. I just had a request for David, that as we're thinking about this, not only do we want to have examples of what it is that we want to have, because this will have a long-term impact. This is going to sound goofy, but I also would like examples of what we don't want, because I'm sure there are shoddy products, whatever. And again, I'm not familiar with it, but I want to make sure that we're also imagining what it could look like if we don't put the proper regulation in place. Does that make sense? So, you know, if we could have some examples of what it is that we definitely want to avoid, that could be helpful too. So imagine the downside of what this could be. Make sure that we're specific enough so that we don't go there.
Like Chris pointed out, is if you've got a real estate business, now
Yeah.
8 times a day, that could be houses for sale every 30 seconds changing.
Right.
And then I also think it's David, is that the sign goes off, you know, like 30 minutes after the business closes. So it's not on at 2 o'clock in the morning.
The lighting goes off.
Yeah, the lighting goes off on the sign. Or if the sign is an LED, the whole sign goes blank.
That's a good idea.
And also in terms of the types of design products, I mean, we had examples of what looks nice, but you know, are there things that don't look nice? So
That's a tough one without going through a DRB review. It's going to be somewhat up to the individual owner.
Oh, no. But just as because you're in the design, you know, you're in the business, and so you're thinking about it. I have no idea what kinds of products are out there. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, I think the ordinance, the way it was presented, Penny, really contemplated display case boxes, and that what we were enabling through this ordinance was strictly this. Now, David, I will say that the conversation was a little confused by all the other pictures we saw, but I know that those were things that the DRB were looking at and necessarily weren't put in there to guide us in any way. But you know, my understanding from the reading of the ordinance is we're talking strictly about, you know, display cases that are a maximum of 2 feet by 3 feet and no deeper than, I can't remember, 3 inches, was it, David?
4 inches.
4 inches. And that's it. That's all that was being, you know, not additional signage. It would have to be contained within the box, but it would permit them to light it and change the display from time to time. So, hi, Jack.
Hey.
So, you guys okay with that? About I hate to say kicking the can down the road. I'd rather get to a place where we can actually have an ordinance in front of us that seems to reflect what the feelings are here. Some of the limitations with types of businesses, and you know, David, you and Brian can think about that and come up with some definitions that work. If permitted use isn't appropriate, then maybe something else is. But I can't see us beating this thing to death anymore, guys, because we do have a lot of work. So I'd rather do is just table this, send it back to community development, and then bring us something back that might be a little bit closer to what you're hearing tonight.
So Chris, this is Kristen. We did get an email request for one final public comment on this issue before we end discussion of the comment.
Okay. Go ahead and read it.
So Teresa emailed and asked if she could have one final comment. So Teresa, are you on the line?
So, yep. And so part of it, thank you very much, was already covered, that it was excluding LED. And as you know, David, the design review board was very specific and narrowing that scope so that it didn't expand to that and it didn't expand to slide letters, whatever. So I think Chris Rintz just kind of clarified that. And then Penny, I would just add that the sandwich boards are horrible. First of all, they're seasonal, they blow over, and you have to look down when you look at them, and they're not really that great because you're working with chalk, and most of us aren't artists, and more paper in the windows is tacky, I think. And that, as you may or may not remember from the February 4th meeting, I tried something that was uplifted, a little bit higher, but it was an outdoor, and it got tremendous more people stopping to read. So the key is that it's at eye level and that it's professional looking. So thank you for the time to add those last comments.
Great. Thanks, Teresa. All right, David, I think you've got your work cut out for you on this one.
Okay.
Go forth and create. Thank you. All right. So we'll move forward on the agenda. The next item is B, Resolution number 47, 2020, amendment to development agreement and restrictive comments, 630 Pine Lane, and this is for adoption. This request to amend the development agreement for a 2007 subdivision would amend the restrictive covenants that were placed on the parcels at that time. David is here again. He's working hard tonight to run through this, and I'll turn it over to you, David.
Actually, Brian is going to cover this item.
Great. All right, Brian, go for it.
See if hopefully I'm sharing my screen with you all now.
Yes.
The matter before the council this evening, as the village president stated, is a request to amend zoning restrictive covenants that were established for the subject property at 630 Pine Lane. The subject property is shown highlighted in both images on your screen. Subject property was established in its current configuration in a 2006 subdivision called 630 Pine Lane CBI subdivision. That subdivision created 3 lots from what had previously been used as a single zoning lot with a single residence. Subject property shown on the screen is the center lot of the 2006 subdivision and is configured as a flag lot, accessed from Pine Lane to the east. The subject property, as well as the immediate surrounding parcels, are zoned R2 single family residential, which is the area shown in green on the image to the left. The R2 zoning district requires one of the zoning ordinance's larger lot sizes, requiring a minimum lot size of 24,000 square feet. Prior to the 2006 subdivision, 630 Pine Lane was a single parcel measuring 790 feet in depth and 3.3 acres in area. The original 630 Pine Lane residence is shown in the aerial image on your screen, roughly centered on the lot there. It's also possible to see in that aerial imagery the darker areas on the periphery of the parcel and on the interior as well, showing a significant amount of tree coverage on the larger parcel. Subject property also lies adjacent to the FEMA floodplain, as shown as the image on your screen. Combination of the large number of mature trees and the presence of the FEMA floodplain on the westerly portion of the subdivision led the council in 2006 to impose a series of conditions on approval of this 3-lot subdivision. During the course of the initial review of the subdivision, the original developers of that subdivision had indicated a willingness to restore and add on to the original 1922 residence, which is or was located on the subject property. The image on your screen is an exhibit from the development agreement between the village and the developers at the time. And highlighted in yellow at the center of that image is an outline of the original 1922 residence in the darker yellow, along with what had been proposed as an addition to the northwest portion of the original residence. If you look at the flanking that lot on both sides to the east and west, while it's not directly relevant to the matter before the council this evening, the image is also showing the outline of approved building footprints on the other 2 lots, configured in both cases to preserve a large number of mature trees on this site. Following the approval of the subdivision in 2006, the developers constructed a series of public improvements to serve these 3 lots, including water, sewer, and electric utility improvements. In addition, the developers constructed a system to collect and decaying stormwater runoff for all 3 lots. The system shown in the image on your screen depicts 2 underground detention vaults in blue, as well as stormwater conveyance pipes, which direct the stormwater ultimately towards the storm sewer in Hibbard Road. In conjunction with the construction of those public improvements, a new residence was constructed on the easterly lot at 624 Pine Lane, which received a certificate of occupancy in approximately 2010. In 2013, the applicants who own the subject property submitted a petition to the Village Council requesting permission to demolish the original 1922 residence on the subject property based on testimony that much of the historic value of the structure had been lost and that restoration was no longer economically viable. During the course of the council's consideration of the 2013 demolition request, it was observed that the original 2006 subdivision approval had established effective limits on what could be built on all 3 lots, including the subject property, where they had approved a specific plan for the restoration of the original residence along with the proposed expansion to that residence. The council did ultimately approve the demolition request and the delisting of the certified landmark status at 630 Pine Lane, allowing the demolition. However, in approving that demolition permit, the council had established a series of restrictive zoning covenants, which imposed several zoning standards which were more restrictive than the village's zoning ordinance. Those standards were arrived at specifically based on the approved footprint and building size for the 2006 restoration and remodeling proposal. So the image on your screen effectively depicts the increased setback requirements that were imposed by the Village Council in 2013. The increased setback requirements, the greater setback requirements, are shown in a solid red line, whereas the standard zoning requirements that would be in place without those restrictive covenants is shown as a dashed red line. In addition to increasing the setback requirements, the Village Council had imposed additional building size restrictions. They limited the size of the building that could be built on Lot 2, limiting the maximum gross floor area, the maximum building footprint or roof lot coverage, the maximum impermeable area, as well as the maximum building height. Again, these reductions were tied to the approved plan from the 2006 renovation proposal for the 2006 approval. So that takes us to what is the current request that's before the Village Council for modifications to the restrictive covenants that I just described to you. There are 5 specific modifications that have been requested by the applicant property owners. The first request is to effectively return the front yard setback requirement measured from the easterly property line, to reduce that from 77.91 feet to the zoning standard requirement of 50 feet. The second request is to reduce the rear yard setback measured from the westerly property line, reduce it from the 47.59 foot rear yard requirement that's currently in effect, reducing that to the standard zoning of 25 feet. The third requested amendment would increase the allowable maximum building footprint from 4,675 square feet to 7,000 square feet. And the fourth request would be to increase the maximum impermeable surface area from 15,432 square feet to 20,819 square feet. And then the last zoning amendment that is part of this evening's request would be to increase the maximum building height from the current restrictive covenant of 29 feet to increase the building height to 30 feet, but which would be less than the standard zoning limitation of 33 feet. There are, and it's worth noting, some of the 2013 restrictive covenants which would not change under the current request before you. The 2013 restrictive covenant, which increased the north side yard from 12 feet to over 33 feet, would remain in effect. The south side yard, which was increased from 22 feet to over 39 feet, would remain in effect. And lastly, the restrictive covenant that was imposed by the council in 2013, which reduced the maximum gross floor area 10,347 to 9,275 square feet, would also remain in effect. There's a lot of numbers I've thrown at you and a fair amount of history to this project. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time if you like.
Okay, that's what I wanted to say at this point. I would like to have you open it up for you guys to just for questions strictly on Brian's presentation, because I think we would like to hear from the applicant as well. So if you have questions to Brian on his application, and you're right, Brian, it's thick and it's a lot of history. So I'll open up the floor for you guys to work them over. John, I see your hands up.
Sure. Okay. I think three pretty simple questions to start off. Brian, were you around and to really have any input on why this was done 2015 with these very restrictive covenants?
I was around at the time these that the demolition petition was filed with the village. If your question may be pertaining to how the numbers were arrived at. In terms of the restrictions, it may be helpful if I go back to that screen showing setbacks, because they did effectively correspond to the
original building with the addition. Okay.
To the original building position as was shown there. So it was quite literally, if you squint, you can kind of see that the front yard setback for that existing residence was shown at 77.91 feet. So those numbers were taken quite literally and applied directly to and were the source of the restrictions that were imposed in 2013 then, including the building size.
Right, okay. And I know in all the numbers you presented tonight, what is the minimum lot area requirement for this zoning district?
This zoning district is, this is in the R2 zoning district, which requires a minimum lot size of 24,000 square feet, a little over half an acre.
And how many square feet is this?
I believe it's over 41,000.
Okay, good. And then, irregardless of the covenants that are in place, how does the proposed changes compared to current bulk requirements if there were no covenants? That's a really tough, difficult question to answer, maybe. But assuming there were no covenants and they've got a 1,000-foot lot, how does it compare to what they're really asking for?
Well, in terms of, you're asking the question regarding the bulk standards, does it?
Yeah, like currently, current impervious calculations, the bulk requirements, the FAR, the roof area. If they had no covenants on 40,000 square feet, they could probably build what they're asking for, if not more, maybe.
That's on page 85, right?
Okay. Great.
Yeah, the gross floor area, which is probably the most effective control of the total size of the structure, because it includes all areas of all stories. The maximum gross floor area for this lot, the restrictive covenant that is in effect and would remain in effect, allows 9,275 square feet. The underlying zoning with no restrictive covenant would allow 10,347 square feet.
And so we're still under.
Correct.
Okay.
Although,
Questions only?
Right. Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Penny, I heard you there.
yeah, that there's 10% for the FAR, but then for the roof lot coverage, that actually is what it's the footprint of the house is significantly less. So it basically needs to be a multi-story house rather than a one-story. Looking on page 85. So that actually is really what the biggest restriction is. Is there, Brian, is there anything different in terms of anything about the circumstances that are different from when the covenant was put in place to now? There was a lot of evidence that was submitted for the demolition in 2013, but I don't really see any information given relative to why circumstances have changed between now and then. Did I miss something?
You have in your agenda material the entirety of the application that was submitted by the applicants and their attorney.
Okay, so I didn't see anything, and so that's okay. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something.
Yeah, they may be prepared to speak to that.
Yeah, I got another question for Brian. From the initial subdivision to the demolition to where we are today, is it all the same owner?
It's a relatively complex question. I'll do my best to try and explain the history, because it has been many years.
And if it's best that the applicant answer that question, I'm okay with it too.
Okay, that may be a good idea. I can tell you that the property owner in 2013 is the same as the property owner this evening.
Okay.
Same applicants.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Brian?
Brian, is the other lot 1, I think, is that a buildable lot, or what's the status of that lot? Is that owned by the applicant?
Lot 1 is also owned by the applicants, the Murphys, also known as in their LLC, Pine Lane LLC. They own Lot 1 as well as the subject property. Lot 1 was, there was every intention, certainly, of that being built upon as a separate buildable lot. If you remember back in one of the earlier slides, the map showing the location of the FEMA floodplain, the Lot 1 to the far west is wholly within the floodplain. I think effectively it would be accurate to say that. So because of Lot 1 being within the floodplain, that necessitated some rather extensive engineering design work in order to create a buildable what we refer to in the community development department as the building pad, where they effectively build up a clay pad above the flood elevation level. And then, as many of you may be aware, when you build a clay pad within the floodplain to bring a portion of the lot above the flood level, there needs to be a compensating area of stormwater detention or a depression on the lot so that there is no net fill within the floodplain. These are FEMA floodplain management requirements. Many of those improvements were constructed as part of the original construction of this subdivision. There is, if you were to go out to lot 1 today, you'd see an elevated clay pad, and immediately east of that, a large depression area to provide that compensatory storage. While that pad had been constructed, and we believe it was constructed according to the plans that were submitted to the village, the pad was never certified and approved by FEMA. Because of that, and because the floodplain management ordinance has changed since its construction, that building pad is not considered technically buildable at this point. It is not. It would not be able to be built on without some modifications to the pad and to their plans. So it's a very complicated answer to is lot 1 buildable?
And is the property line for lot 2 on the west side, does that pretty much go to that depression area?
The rear lot line of lot 2 comes very close to and almost is the eastern edge of the depression or the compensatory storage area.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, hearing none. Brian, could you please promote the applicants and their consultants to the screen, please?
I will do that. Okay, I have unmuted and made panelists Suzanne Murphy, one of the owners, and their legal counsel, Todd Stevens.
Awesome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Evening. Well, now's your opportunity to state your case and request and help us understand what it is you're doing and why you're trying to do it.
Okay,
All right.
go ahead, Suzanne. Do you want me to start?
You could start, Todd.
I was the Murphy's attorney back in 2013 when we did the amended development agreement. The Murphys were silent investors with a group by the name of CBI, which was the 2 Marlowe brothers who got into a bunch of development on the North Shore. The Marlowe brothers basically went bankrupt and ran out of the country and dropped this particular property in the Murphys' lap, which they hadn't bargained for. And the Marlowe brothers also let this beautiful historic house become in such disrepair, as Brian had spoken earlier to, that it had to be decertified and eventually torn down. Because of that, back in 2013, the village, I think, due to the circumstances, said, look, you guys can build, but we want CBI to build the house in the footprint where the old historic house had been. This house has been on the market for over 10 years. And finally, we have a very lovely, nice young couple, AJ Weinberg and his wife, Samantha. AJ's grew up in Glencoe, and they want to build a very modest house on this particular lot. They have plans already drawn up, and their plans are for a 5,000 square foot lot, which is well below what is permitted. As discussed earlier, there's compensatory storage on the lot in the southeast corner. And one of the variances is that they want to move the footprint as far to the northwest as possible out of the line or sight line of lot one, the existing house to the east. They've walked the property with the village arborist because there's 3 heritage trees that they're also trying to save. And that's another reason why they're asking for these variances in addition to some other smaller trees. So they're really looking for some variances which are still well short of the current building code. And the reason for the variances are to get out of the line of sight of the neighboring house and to save trees. And with that, Suzanne, do you have any other questions or any comments that you'd like to add?
Well, the only thing I'd like to add is we just would like to, I don't think we're asking for more than we should. We just want to make it where this becomes a reasonable buildable lot for a buyer. In the past, we've had people interested, but they felt that there was too many restrictions on the lot. And at this point, we've had it on the market for over 10 years. And, we finally have a serious buyer, but, again, without, the zoning changed a bit, we're going to have an issue with them. So that's all. I hope we're not, I don't think we're asking for anything extra on top of what everyone else has in the area. We just want something similar to the neighbors.
Well, I think, the neighboring house, I believe is, I think the lot, and you can correct me, Brian, we could build up to 9,275 square feet. The Weinbergs are proposing to build 5,000, so they're 4,000 square feet on GFA below what is already permitted. So GFA, we're well below, we're not looking for a variance, it's just mostly the setbacks to save these trees and to move away from the existing house on lot one to the east. The neighboring house, I believe, is about 16,000 square feet. So we're really looking at building a very modest house. And the contract buyers, the Weinbergs, I think are going to call in with some comments later on this evening. If you have any other questions, you could also ask them directly.
Sure. Brian, are they in the queue? Can't hear you.
Yeah, we do have Weinberg, Adam Weinberg, and Samantha, both in the queue.
Why don't you bring them up?
We'll do that right now.
Thank you.
Right there. We're here.
Oh, hi.
Hello. We can't quite figure out how to do the video, but
Oh, down on the bottom, there's a little camera thing that's red right now. Just tap it and make it black.
Hopefully there's enough
There you
lighting.
are. That's easy. Hi.
So just to reiterate on what Todd and Suzanne have already said, the real reason for the ask to change the setback, there's some beautiful oak trees that we are just completely concerned to keep. We don't want to touch them, and without changing the setbacks, especially to the west side, we're really, really restricted on what we can build and where, and we want more of a square style home versus the long shape of the old home that was there. we're really looking to keep it pretty modest and
5,000 square feet actually on the current set we're working on actually includes the basement, which is a storage room. It's nothing exciting. We're looking, I know if you look at the plans, you're going to ask why we, need the full spread. And it's basically so we can tuck the house right into the areas that we want to save and out of the areas that we basically don't need. We're, as Todd mentioned, we're trying to stay in that southwest end of the property. However, part of the plans is building out towards the east, but not over the tank, which is already restricting us.
yeah, so although we're asking for the setbacks on the front yard to be improved, it really is, we're still actually confined to not building over that tank. So even though we're asking for the setback to go from 75 to 50 feet, I don't think that we really have much wiggle room going that way anyways.
Great. Okay, Village Council, do you have any questions or the like for either the Weinbergs or Ms. Murphy or Todd?
Chris, I actually do.
Go ahead, Bob.
It related to what Ms. Weinberg just said. I'm most interested on the east side here, in the property owner that built a home based on, or bought a home, whatever, based on a certain understanding in terms of setback of lot 2. But you just said that you weren't going to move, you weren't going to have your property within that 50 foot, or you weren't going to use much of what you are asking for between the 7 and 50 foot. Can you define that? Can you tell us exactly how close you would be going to that property line?
So currently we are working with our architect. We are completely within the buildable confines as they are. If there was any wiggle room to move anything towards the east side, it would be maybe to extend our garage 5 feet, if that.
She's killing herself.
That's the only thing that
She's saying they don't need it.
changing at all.
She's trying to meet their needs.
Someone needs to mute, but
Yeah, mom, that's my mom and dad. Mom, you guys
all right,
are
Mom and
muted.
Dad, you gotta mute up. You can tell your mom and dad to mute themselves.
mute yourselves, mom and dad.
It worked for me.
But so really, on the east setback, if you went from 77 to 72 feet, that might work.
The only issue that we would run into is something like an ancillary structure, some sort of shed, some sort of something in the future that we're not currently thinking about, because right now we're thinking about the house and getting our kids there. So so it's some sort of structure that would kind of tuck up in that area, because the way we would orient the house, there's nowhere really else to put a shed or something along those lines other than up on that east side, because again, of all the trees, there's a tree set right as you drive onto the property that on the western edge, there's another tree set that sits pretty much right in the middle that the old house went up and around, that is still technically in the current buildable area, but again, we're trying to stay out of there. Okay.
I have to say, I'm confused about where you're proposing to put the house. Todd said northwest and you said southwest. So I'm not sure where.
Southwest.
The southwest.
There's a lot of trees on the northwest.
Okay,
My
so then would you be, rather than having a long narrow house, you would be
It's kind of like two bars. So there's one stretch that's kind of garage living space, and then there's another one that's kind of the living room, family room stack. So it's kind of an L, but it's kind of a box. It's
Okay.
in between.
Okay, so it would be pulling to the southwest rather than to the north. Okay, all right. Thank you. That's helpful.
And we could share the proposed plans. We have them if you want us to show them to you.
That would have been a good idea to have those available, because it's really hard to kind of project into the future. And I'm not saying that this council's leaning one way or another, but certainly if the approval were based on an actual proposed improvement, it might make it a little bit easier for everybody to navigate the situation and really understand what's going on. But at this point, what we're looking at is a red box on a piece of paper that says somewhere in here we want to do something.
And we don't have any diagrams of where the tank or whatever you're talking about is. So nor where the trees are. So I don't have any visual to help guide what you're talking about.
And one thing to remember is we're still well below the current building code. So
Well,
we're not asking.
I know that's not the point. I mean, just my question is, I don't understand relative to the difficulties that you're describing that run with a property, which is, I don't have any evidence before me that says that there's circumstances, why the circumstances are different that we need to consider. So that's what I'm having a hard time visualizing, because I'm clearly not very imaginative.
John?
Yeah, so what I'm getting from Adam and Samantha is that with their proposed plan, they may need a very minor variance from the existing covenants. And I really think it would be beneficial to, present a plan to us that shows where they really want to put that house for sure. And then let's give them a little leeway, but to go from 5,000 square feet to allow 10,000 square feet, that they may not need it, we might be going through a lot of trouble. And I think it would be a lot easier if we saw a plan with the actual setbacks. And I have a question maybe real quick for Brian or David. The building setbacks, ancillary structures are still allowed, I would assume, correct? Such as a shed or a playroom, or not a playroom, but a playhouse or something. That's still allowed in addition to the main residence, correct?
They generally are subject to the setback requirements of the property as a whole. With some exceptions, you can have accessory storage buildings, for example, encroach into certain portions of required rear yards.
What about garages? Aren't garages another issue that could be closer? Detached garage?
Detached garages are generally something, if they're permitted within the required yard area, it's within a required rear yard.
Okay.
I'm not sure if a detached garage would be permitted in the front yard. I believe there's a limitation that would not allow that.
Okay. Yeah, because I know he was talking about, future shed or something. And, we don't want to hinder that either if we can. And I kind of want to keep the zoning changes as minimal as possible, respecting the past council that went through the trouble of creating the variances that currently exist or covenants that exist on the property. So I have no problem working with them, and I think it would help us see in a plan. Thanks.
Brian, do you have a copy of the Weinberg's plan? Have they shared it with you, Brian?
We have not received anything at the village, no.
Okay. I mean, Adam, could you take a picture of the floor plan? Do you have it with you now?
We can't consider that as part of this submittal because it wasn't in the agenda, Todd. It would make our job a lot easier, and I think it would actually benefit your potential purchaser if the council were asked to review and vote on a proposed structure rather than just these amorphous setback lines which have been moved multiple times over the past 15 years. So, you know, right now, none of us understand or can see what it is you're going to do. And taking a picture off of a cell phone and then trying to somehow paste that up on the screen, I don't think it would work in open session, and I'm certainly not prepared to try to deal with the technology to get something like that distributed to the trustees. And the other thing is that particular request then would be of the council to approve a specific set of improvements and a specific use. It would be clearly defined rather than just asking us for, you know, changes in the in the covenants. You know, we have neighbors that are very concerned about this project. Some may have seen the proposed use. Some may not have. And I think it would be a very, very difficult road to travel without understanding exactly what the proposed improvements would be. Does anybody
If I may,
just a second. Does anybody here on council feel differently about that?
No, I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Todd?
well, if I may, the difficulty is the Weinbergs, you know, are contract purchasers. We've tried selling this for over 10 years. As I mentioned before, the Murphys had this dropped in their lap. They were investors. All these restrictions were put on because of the basically prior owners, CBI and the Marlowe brothers, said that they were going to rehab the historic house, which they unfortunately let fall down into such disrepair. It had to be torn down, as Brian had mentioned earlier. All these restrictive covenants were really put on around that old house that is now gone. This is a very large lot. This isn't.
Todd, I was on village council when the Murphys came and
I remember
and shared their story, and we're all very empathetic with what's happened with them. That isn't the case at all. I remember the story very clearly, and I remember the request for demolition, and I understand the plight that they've suffered over the past 10 years. I'm just simply saying that if you were to connect actual improvements with this request, it might make it easier for this council to actually understand what it is they're approving, and it might help your neighbors understand a little bit better and potentially get a comfort level with what you're doing.
I agree. Could we table this into next month, or I guess depends on how long the Weinbergs would need for the architect to draw up it. I think that'd be fantastic.
No, we're not looking for architecture. We're looking for a simple site plan, you know, with some raw numbers. And I think we could get you back on the agenda for the 18th. Is that when the meeting is, Kristen?
The next regular meeting is August 4th.
Right. Well, we could look at it then too.
And then there's August 18th.
Right.
Oh, that's great. Either of those should work. So we'd be grateful for the opportunity to get you a footprint.
Well, can we try
To
for
share
the
with
floor,
everybody.
just for the Weinberg sake? They're so anxious to, you know, get going on this. They have spent a lot of time on these drawings, and I guess my worry about them is they've spent so much time on this without even owning the property. I just feel like I'm trying to help them move along with this too.
Suzanne, and yes, I hear exactly what you're saying. Look at if the Weinbergs reach out to the neighbors of concern, we have letters on file from several neighbors who are not comfortable with what they've seen or heard to date. But you know, connect with your future neighbors, show them what you want to do, tell them your story, and then come back to us with something that is a little easier to work with. Penny, just a second, please.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't think this council is unwilling to work with Suzanne or with the Feinbergs. I just think we need more information, and we need to have our neighborhood understand what the proposal is so that they can speak to the matters that may or may not concern them.
Agreed.
Penny, did you have anything else you needed to add?
Yeah, I just, pardon me if I'm repeating myself, but with the information that comes in, it would be really helpful to have what the difficulties are on the piece of property with whatever the stormwater retention or whatever, and the trees, and then how you're trying to get out of the sight line of the existing house. So those are factors that will help us understand what you're trying to work around and accomplish on the lot. So that would be really helpful information. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're not looking for a major architectural presentation here. I have a sneaking suspicion, Adam and Samantha, that you have what we need. It's just a matter of getting it in, getting it submitted as part of the agenda packet so the public can scrutinize it, and maybe taking a little time to meet your potential future neighbors and helping them understand what you're going to do. And that might be a much easier path to getting what you'd really like to do, and what we'd like to do, which is welcome you as new residents to the community.
Thank you.
Great.
Well, thank you very much. Do you want to just, should we go through the village or do you want to just set it for 8/4 tonight? Or what would you like to do, Samantha and Adam? Do you think we could get something?
We have schematic that lays it out, and we'll make sure to, I'll probably do it myself, highlight the trees of where they sit, and what, the big ones, as well as,
The tank.
It's big.
Adam, there's a tree survey already on file, and I know it was part of this agenda packet, so it might just be superimposing your improvements over the existing tree survey, and that would be just fine.
Yeah, and not to forget the underground stormwater if there is any to show that.
Where is the tree survey?
There is the stormwater on, I think Brian showed a image where that stormwater is.
Yeah, just in
obviously
relationship to your lot, your
relationship.
trees, and your new house.
We just don't have it on our packet, so.
We can
I
definitely
have
do
it up
that.
on the screen, so I know it exists.
Yeah, right, exactly. It would just to help us to understand so that we can do what needs to be done.
Absolutely.
All right,
Chris,
we'll be sure to
because-
get that submitted.
Go ahead. Somebody.
Because this was a public hearing below, you need to defer it to a date certain. So we need to decide which date it's going to be on the agenda.
Well, I think 8/4, is that good with you, Adam and Samantha?
We'll probably send it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, so
That would be the motion to make.
Yep, 8/4, if we could move to set it for 8/4, please.
All right, I'm going to ask for a motion to continue this matter till the August 4th next regular village council meeting.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Roll call vote, Kristen?
Trustee Apatow,
Yes.
trustee Dearborn,
Yes.
trustee Lampier,
Yes.
trustee Caladarchi,
Yes.
trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Swerk.
Yes.
That motion carries. Thank you. And I just want to say to all the people who were in the queue that were interested in speaking on this, I really appreciate you coming out here, but it's clear that all the information regarding the potential future development wasn't available for any of us to review. And I'm hoping that all the parties get together and sort through this, come back. And then if you have concerns, we would, village council would definitely want to hear about it and help us move forward. So hopefully that's okay for you guys. I know, Mark, I know you're out there, and I'm not sure if any of the other neighbors decided to come, but I think that's the best way to go in this situation.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, have a great evening.
Yeah,
All
you
right,
too. I appreciate it.
August 4th.
We'll see you 8/4 then. Good night. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you.
See ya.
Thank you.
Okie dokie. Okay, number 9, old business, we have none. Number 10, new business is 547 Lincoln Avenue, Delos Therapy Special Use Permit. The Plan Commission has recommended denial of this request for a special use permit to allow a medical pain management clinic in the commercial overlay district in the East Elm Business District. Is it David or Brian on board for this one?
It's David.
Okay. David, you go ahead and review the case with us.
So yes, you have an application for a medical pain management treatment office in the C2 overlay district. I'll go over the specifics of the request. As I said, the property's in the overlay district. It needs a special use permit from the village. The space was most recently occupied by Mark Beard Hair Salon. Other tenants in the building are Aerial Fitness to the north and Cafe Aroma to the south. And then there are offices and apartments on the second level. The space is approximately 1,100 square feet. It has approximately 17 feet of building street frontage. The applicant provides specialized therapy service for chronic pain, muscle stiffness, and athletic injuries. I'll let them explain their services in more detail. They're appointment only. They plan to operate 7 days per week. Their intended hours are Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturday and Sunday, 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. The image here compares their proposed floor plan on the left with the existing floor plan of the salon that was in the space. In terms of their proposed floor plan, they are proposing 3 treatment rooms. Initially, they're looking to have 1 to 2 full-time therapists. And then in 3 to 5 years, they hope to have 4 to 5 therapists. They anticipate having, on average, initially 6 people in the space. That's including staff and clients. And then during peak use, they anticipate having 10, including staff and clients. Due to COVID-19, they were unable to conduct a typical parking study. However, they did present a parking study in terms of comparing the impact of this proposed use with the previous use of the space. The village engineer did review their parking study, and for the district as a whole, the East Elm district, and the difference in the proposed use in parking, that there wasn't going to be any significant difference in the parking demand between the existing use and the proposed use. But again, that's for the overall district as a whole. So the Plan Commission considered this on June 24th. They received 4 emails and heard from 2 members of the public. As mentioned, the commission recommended denial by a vote of 5 to 3. All the members felt the business would be a welcome addition to the community. The majority found the location an issue. Those who were opposed to the request were concerned about parking impact on retailers in the immediate area of the store. Others didn't feel there was enough evidence presented regarding the standards. Others felt they didn't meet all of the special use standards. And those are identified on page 117 of the agenda packet. They felt its location in the heart of the retail district in the retail overlay district was an issue. They felt it was more appropriate on the edge or in a second story. Those members in favor pointed out that the frontage was only 17 feet in width, and they thought that was a minimal impact for a non-retail use to occupy that small of a space. They mentioned that a restaurant use could have greater parking impacts, and it's an allowed use. And another member felt that given their parking demand and how relatively small it was, that was an advantage for the overall area in terms of the other retail uses that are in the area. So tonight, given that the commission recommended denial, we're looking for policy direction from the council in terms of preparing documents to either approve or deny the request. And with that, I'd be happy to answer questions now or after you hear from the applicant. You're on mute, Chris. Oh,
Yep,
there you go.
I believe it would be worthwhile to, does anybody have any technical questions for David before I move on and have the applicant present? Nope. Okay. Brian, I would like you to promote the applicant and also identify any consultants that may be accompanying them this evening. A lot of people here. Okay, could you help me with the roster of who's who here at the on the meeting?
So Lenny Azzaro is the attorney for the applicant. I will let Lenny introduce his client and the team that's here.
Thank you, David. Good evening, trustees. My name is Lenny Azzaro. I'm an attorney partner at Dinsmore & Scholl. I'm the attorney for the applicant Delos Therapy, LLC. Today we have present the co-founders of Delos Therapy, Mimi Bozica and Eric. Oh, I thought I heard something. Should I keep going?
Please.
Okay, thank you. We have the co-founders present, Mimi Bozica and Eric Owens. Also present are the expert witnesses that were retained by Delos Therapy, who prepared reports that were submitted prior to and at the Plan Commission meeting. Those expert witnesses are Peter Lemon. He's a public engineer, designation PTOE of Kimley Horn. Also present is George Kissel, designation AIA, AICP of Okrent Kissel Associates, Inc. And then lastly, Mary Lindberger, an appraiser, a designated MAI appraiser with Lindberger and Company, LLC. I will not go over the summary of the application since David has already covered that, but as everyone knows, we are seeking a special use permit and we are subject to the overlay district standards. We estimate that our presentation should be less than 10 minutes. We have submitted a substantial amount of documentation prior to the Plan Commission, and that was presented at the Plan Commission meeting. It included an application, the memorandum prepared by Peter Lemon of Kimley Horn regarding parking, the report of George Kissel, the report of Mary Lindberger, a legal memorandum in support of the application for special use permit, applying the evidence to the standards. We've also submitted letters of support from Eric Tepper, CEO, founder of Genstrong, Sherry Weber, Stephen Kao, KAO, who is a Winnetka resident and an investor in Delos Therapy, Dr. Ari Levy, CEO of Shift Medical, as well as Greg Hoffman, CEO of Hoffman Commercial Real Estate, and the landlord of the premises. We also presented videos to the Plan Commission, which we will not be doing this evening, but they've all been made available to the trustees, which we understand that they have had an opportunity and have reviewed. We also understand that the Plan Commission has had access to the actual video of the Plan Commission meeting as well. As David indicated, the Plan Commission voted. Those who voted to not recommend approval of special use permit asserted that the application did not meet the standards that are identified in your packet. This evening, what we wish to do is just address those specific standards by having George Kissel discuss and respond to the comments that were made regarding those standards, as well as Mimi Bozica with regards to the standards that would be that would come from her in terms of her testimony, which both of them testified at the Plan Commission meeting. You will not be hearing from, unless you would like, our traffic consultant, Peter Lemon. The reason being is because Peter Lemon's conclusion was that the proposed use would not have any impact, and the village's own engineer or parking engineer, Mr. Saunders, arrived at the same conclusion. So we will not be presenting Mr. Lemon unless the trustees would like to ask him questions. Additionally, Ms. Limburger is present to answer questions. Ms. Limburger opined that the proposed use, and this is regarding standard 3, would not have a negative impact on neighboring property values. There was no other testimony that was presented to rebut that, so she is available to answer questions, but she did testify and did a report to justify her opinion. So with that, I would turn it over to George Kissel, who is going to address standards 2, 3, 7, 2, 3, and 7.
Actually, Lenny, it's 3, 7, and 8. Okay, so go ahead. So standard number 3 reads that the establishment of the special use will not impede the normal.
George, we can't really hear George, and there's somebody typing.
Can you hear me now?
It sounds better.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll proceed. So standard number 3 states that the establishment of the special use will not impede the normal and orderly development or improvement of other property in the immediate vicinity for uses permitted by right in the district or districts of concern. So we know in this case we're reviewing a special use in the C2 Commercial Overlay District, which means we have 2 sets of review criteria, 6 standard special use criteria that's applicable to all special uses, and the additional 6 special use criteria that are applicable only to the Commercial Overlay District. Standard 3 is one of the original or standard 6 and applies to all special uses. So we review special uses in zoning districts because while those uses are generally compatible with other contemplated permitted uses in the district, there might be something about their operation, their size, noise or traffic generation.
George, it's kind of hard to hear you. I don't know. Can the other trustees hear George?
No.
Okay.
I'm gonna switch to a different mic. Hold on.
Trustee Rintz, would you like for him to start at the beginning?
I'm the president of the village council.
I'm sorry, President Rintz. My apologies.
No, I think he can pick up where he left off.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead, George.
There might be something about these uses that might cause an issue. So the standard asks the question, basically, is there something about this use that would make the situation undesirable for the other permitted uses in the district, such that they would either flee or not want to locate nearby? So the special uses that might fit that category in this circumstance would be something like a taxidermy shop because of its odors, furniture repair and refinishing because of noise and odors, an animal hospital because of noise and odors, or medical offices because of traffic and parking. We know the proposed use is akin to a personal service in a small 16-foot wide tenant space. It's not overly large and will not generate any detrimental level of traffic. We know that the average peak occupancy is 6 to 10, which is similar to the prior use. As clients arrive there by appointment, there is sufficient waiting area. It's highly unlikely it would generate any loitering or situations where people are waiting to get in and disrupting the outdoor dining uses nearby. Its demand in parking, which is addressed in the Kimberly Horn report, is not likely to be more than what was generated in the prior use. That use, which had been there for a very long time, predating the need for a special use permit, clearly didn't deter other retail or restaurant establishments from locating there. So there'll be no processing of materials, food prep on site, no significant generation of noise, vibration, smoke, or odors so as to interfere with the existing businesses. Given all this, there's nothing about the proposed use that would impede the normal and orderly development or improvement of other property in the immediate vicinity for the uses permitted by right. As a result, in my opinion, this standard is met. The next standard we want to take a little bit closer look at is standard number 7, which states the proposed special use at the proposed location will encourage, facilitate, and enhance the continuity, concentration, and pedestrian nature of the area in a manner similar to that of retail uses. So this standard is the first of the 6 supplemental standards of the C2 Commercial Overlay District. These standards in general are concerned with encouraging a vibrant pedestrian environment that's appropriate for a retail-oriented downtown business district. This standard asks the question, will the proposed use generate enough patrons in this location so that it will add to the desired pedestrian nature of the area and support retail uses? So it should be noted that this standard kind of needs to be balanced against standard 12, which asks whether the amount of patrons that will be drawn to the area will be too much such that they overwhelm parking capacity. So this standard seeks to make sure that basically certain dead uses from a pedestrian traffic or activity perspective don't overwhelm an area and reduce its vibrancy. Uses that fit this sort of dead use description in this context would be things like professional offices for accountants, travel agents, and real estate offices, and other uses like catering establishments or repair shops would also fit that profile. So again, as far as the proposed use goes, it's a personal service use that generates a flow of traffic over a course of the day based on its appointment schedule. At about 1,100 square feet with 3 therapy rooms, we know that they have an anticipated peak between 6 and 10, 4 to 6 clients and 2 to 4 staff, and an average daily appointment load of about 12 to 25 for the first few years, with a maximum of about 36 when things really start taking off. So according to the Institute of Traffic Engineers, average daily traffic generation for specialty retail is about 37 per 1,000 square foot. Given all this, the proposed use will certainly not be a dead zone. It will generate activity at the site that, while slightly less than retail, is certainly in the ballpark. So the conclusion here is that indeed, the proposed special use of the proposed location will encourage, facilitate, and enhance the continuity, concentration, and pedestrian nature of the area in a manner similar to that as retail. Therefore, it's my opinion that this standard is met. And finally, we'll take a closer look at standard number 8, which is the location of the proposed special use along the block frontage shall provide for a minimum interruption in the existing and potential continuity and concentration of the retail uses along the block frontage. So again, this is one of the supplemental standards for the C2 overlay district. It seeks to make sure that there are no large swaths of non-retail uses created in the streetscape by any of the listed special uses. So we know the proposal will occupy about 17 feet of frontage along the eastern frontage of Lincoln Avenue. So from the corner of Lincoln and Elm, there's a relatively uninterrupted streetscape that measures about 300 feet until you get to the 575 Lincoln building. That interrupts the continuity. So going from north to south along there's 300 feet of frontage, we have Cafe Aroma, which is a restaurant use. We've got the former Mark Beard Salon, which is a subject property, about 17 feet of frontage. About the same frontage for Aerial Fitness, which is another non-retail use. Then we have Stacked and Folded, which is casual restaurant, Orrington Jewelers, retail. AJ Retreat, which is another approximately 16 feet of personal service. Optique Eyewear Store, Luxury KMK Consignment, which is retail. Sarah Campbell, which is retail. Compass Realty, about 15 feet of office. Jay McLaughlin, which is retail. Ronnie's at Home, which is takeout, restaurant, and catering. M. Stefanich Antiques, which is retail, and Donald Stewart, that's retail. So what this shows is that about 80% of the street frontage along the east side of Lincoln, south of Elm, is occupied by either retail or restaurant uses. You have 3 personal service uses and 1 office use that are really the only interruptions. The largest existing gap is the aerial fitness in the former Mark Beard location where the subject property will be locating. That amounts to a little bit more than 10% of the total frontage. So the proposed use does not add any interruption to the continuity of retail use along this stretch of Lincoln as it replaces another personal service use. As far as opportunity to enhance continuity and concentration, its 17 feet is a little more than 5% of the frontage in this streetscape. 5% or 17 feet does not represent a significant opportunity for potential additional continuity of retail. So given all of this, the proposal does not represent any additional interruption to the existing continuity or concentration of retail uses, nor does it provide a significant opportunity for potential continuity of or concentration of retail in this location. And once again, it's my opinion that this standard is met. With that, I'll turn it back to Lenny for a discussion of the remaining standards.
Thank you very much. The next standard that will be addressed is going to be by Mimi Bozica, co-founder. It's standard number 9. Standard number 9 states that the proposed special use at the proposed location will provide for display windows, facade, signage, and lighting similar in nature and compatible with that provided by retail uses. Mimi, would you please address that particular standard? And if you could just give a little bit more of an overview as it relates to the proposed use.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for your time today. We are really looking forward to being a part of your community. And the business that we have created is actually going to really enhance the area. We are, so for standard number 9, I understand that fitting into the vibe of the location is really important. I want to really mention that as much as we say we're a pain management center, it's very important to know that we're not a medical office. We don't distribute any medicine. We have a technique that's unique to our company that clients come and pay for in cash. So it's typically a very affluent demographic. And as a result, the appearance of our space is really important. We work with designers to create beautiful locations because it's really important to us. Research has shown that the aesthetic feel and look of the place actually contributes to well-being. So we have a very high-end aesthetic in all of our other locations. I'm sure you had a chance to look at some of our photos. We're really excited about the design that was created for this location. The space in the front is actually also going to serve as a place where we will have our retail items. And I don't think that we emphasized that enough in the last meeting. Earlier this year, we actually started working on some very specific self-treatment tools that our clients are seeking. So we're even working on privately branded tools that folks can purchase to do self-treatment at home for their well-being of their muscles. So there is a retail portion of the space that will be in the front. We have apparel that we sell to our clients that have very cool sayings on them to support that's branded for Delos Therapy. And I believe that you will be impressed with the look and feel of the space and the activity that you will see there. I also just want to address really quickly standard number 7, I believe, as far as our contribution to the community. Our success, the source of it has quite largely been the partnerships that we have created as a company. So to just give you an idea of how much we collaborate with businesses in our neighborhoods, we have done approximately 120 events in collaboration with partners last year. And what we typically do, I actually went through the street just to make sure that I understood all the tenants in the street where we have actually done work in collaboration to have mutual benefit with almost every industry that is represented on that street, from restaurants to, frankly, clothing stores. So we are, in my opinion, experts at contributing to the economic development of our partners. We obviously hope that they will help us as well, but we bring a lot of value to the community in terms of how much we are involved. And as a result, our clients are also very involved in the partners that we work with because they trust our opinions. And if we choose to work with certain businesses and promote them, they typically listen.
Thank you. We have all of our expert witnesses available to answer questions. Again, we were told that that you all had the information that we previously submitted, so we were not going to be redundant and go over that again. Again, we've submitted a lot of really good information and expert testimony. So other than citing it and requesting that be admitted to the record here, that's all that we have. And so with that, we would respectfully request a favorable vote approving the proposed special use for Delos Therapy at the premises. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, trustees, any questions for either David or for the applicant and their professional team? John, I saw your hand go up right off the bat, so go ahead.
Yeah, I guess, sorry.
Oh, you're on.
Okay, yeah. I have no questions. I just want to make sure that the council knew that I did attend that plan commission meeting and did hear all of the input of the plan commission. And I really think, again, I have no questions, so I can probably talk about what I found if you prefer to wait, Chris.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Right. Let's just see if we can get all the information on the table so we can deliberate intelligently. Andy?
Yeah, I think this has been confirmed. No objections from any of the neighboring stores or businesses?
No, we received no negative comments regarding it.
And there is a big sign up there right now notifying of the special use, so everybody knows, right?
And then, yes, and notices were sent out.
Okay. Thank you.
David, this was, I think I saw something in the report that said that if this were an application for a restaurant, this would be approved?
A restaurant is allowed by right, so they would not have to go through a special use process.
Okay, thank you.
Rob.
You talked about events that are beneficial to other businesses. I'm just trying to, it makes you an expert on this. I'm just kind of curious what that is, and is that promotional events, or you? I'm just curious how you affect and work with other businesses that you're talking about.
Yeah, sure. So let me start first about collaboration outside of events. So what we typically do is when we create a partnership with neighboring businesses, we typically implement some sort of a cross-promotional program where we typically have collateral that we give to our clients and vice versa to support the neighboring business. And usually there's some sort of incentive aligned with that recommendation. Our therapists are actually quite good at promoting partner businesses, and they're actually the most effective because their clients trust them. We do a lot of on-site events. So I mentioned before that we've worked with pretty much every industry represented on the street. We have actually been in restaurants giving our therapy and complimentary treatments to patrons over there. And we have contributed to our clients by offering certain promotions and offers from the restaurant. We do corporate events. So we visit law firms, we visit accounting firms, commercial buildings, we visit residential buildings, we go on site to retail stores to do complimentary treatments. We've done health fairs. We do a huge event in Naperville called Veggie Fest, where we're the biggest attraction. It's attended by 60,000 people. So And usually when we're invited to these on-site events, we're actually bringing along the partners that we work with. So if we're going to a corporate office, we would invite a restaurant that is one of the partners to go and sample some of their offerings in addition to us sampling ours.
Okay. All right. That's helpful. Thank you very much. One other quick question. Have you looked at were there any other sites that you're looking at in the village considered? There are a few openings, I think, but I'm just curious if there are any other sites that you considered.
We've looked for over a year, not just in Winnetka, but also in North Shore, and we really found
I think we lost her.
Nope.
even on second floors. Can you hear me?
Sorry, we lost you from the beginning of your answer. I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry, one more time. So we looked for over a year throughout the North Shore, and we fell in love with Manette because we thought that the feel of the village really was aligned with our brand and also the clients that we serve. And then I just wanted to address the idea of looking at a second floor location or something a little bit further away. And I want you to think of our therapy as a treatment that's not really offered, not offered anywhere else. That's very similar to, let's say, an Athletico, for example. So we have made a decision over a year ago that as we expand any future locations, branding is really important, and having a street level presence is really important. If you look at those physical therapy offices, they're on street level. It just makes a very big difference in terms of their exposure, their brand, their visibility. So we are not considering any non-retail location or level locations for any locations moving forward for our company.
Well, I understand that, and I completely understand that logic. I didn't know if other parts in the village, there are other wonderful spots. I didn't know if you considered any other, prime kind of floor level spots in the village.
We have, and they all require the special use permit, but working with this landlord has been ideal, and the size of the space is perfect for what we need. The surrounding businesses are similar to the partners that we currently have, so it just made a lot of sense for us.
Okay.
May I say something?
Sure.
Yeah, and to expand a little bit on what Mimi said, a big decision was that there's a gym right next door, right? So we do a lot of partnerships and collaboration with many different types of businesses, but where we have really succeeded is having strong relationships with gyms and be able to get our clients into the gym and get the clients, then the customers of the gym coming into us. So if there wasn't any kind of gym or any kind of fitness or anything like that in that area, it makes it a little bit more difficult for us. But the fact that there was a gym right next door, that was extremely appealing to us.
And there's also one across the street, actually.
Yep.
And down the street, the community house as well.
So that weighs very heavily on our decisions to go into any place. We've seen some nice places in different parts of the suburbs in Chicago, and if we look around and there are no fitness facilities, no gyms, no people that are worried about their fitness or their bodies, it's just not a good fit for us. And so having, I think, 3 just in that area, and the area just seemed very clean, seemed very upscale. The amount of size was perfect. The parking, I would like to spend a minute just discussing, like, to me, the parking was not even an issue. I mean, one of the therapists that we have that would agree to go there would be taking the train in. And so there'd be, this might be for the first 6 months or year, we might be only having 1 or 2 patients. So that's literally 1, 2, or 3 spots that'll be taken, because the therapists that are coming in won't even be taking up any parking. So it's like, when I hear peak at 6 to 10 spots, I mean, that's like very unlikely that, we hope that it will be that much at some point, but it's going to take a long time before we ever ramp up to that many spots. Most of the therapists coming in will be taking the train, and then it'll be left to 1 or 2 or 3 patients that are coming in. I mean, it's single digits that we're talking about with regards to parking, and I was a little confused by the original meeting because they were saying, well, there's too much of a parking demand, and I was thinking, well, it's like 3 or 4 spots, but if a restaurant went in there, it would be 10 times that.
Okay. Any other, Penny, I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I do have a question. This is for George. He mentioned the comparison of retail traffic versus what would be generated by this particular use. I saw a comparison of the former, the salon, what traffic was on, I think, an hourly basis, but I didn't see any relative to retail standards. Could you give us that information specifically?
Sure. So as we know, that the retail space is a little more than 1,000 square feet.
Yep.
And an indicator of how many people come to the site, of course, is the Institute of Traffic Engineers traffic generation. Theoretically, cars are coming, people are coming. So the standard number for especially retail is 36 trips daily per 1,000 square feet. So if we're about 1,100 square feet, maybe it's 38, 39 trips, which is comparable to the initial, 12 to 25, appointment load that the applicant would have starting off, and their maximum would be 36. We don't know if they'll reach that or how often they'll reach that. But in general, those numbers are comparable. It's not a situation where it's something like an accountant's office where there's, the only comings and goings most of the time are the employees coming back and forth from the space. It's not similar to something like a catering operation where, they're basically making things on site and then transferring them to another location. There is a constant flow of people coming to and from the site on a daily basis, and that reinforces the kind of the pedestrian traffic flow in the area, which is what the standard is seeking to make sure the use provides in some way, shape, or form.
So then to clarify, you say that to start with, that would be like what the first year would be 12 to 24 a day, and then working up towards 36. Did I get that correct?
The applicant would probably answer that more definitively, but those are the numbers that were given to me, yes.
Okay.
That 12 to 24 safely for the first 2 years is probably the right amount, just based on our history. And then, of course, we have to take COVID into consideration as well.
Yeah, of course. Good. Thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that information.
Sure.
Any other questions for the applicant or for David? I think it's time for us to at least share our thoughts with each other. Does anybody want to kick off the conversation?
Sure, I will. Before I lose my connection.
Okay.
It's been doing some weird things. So if I all of a sudden disappear, don't take it personally. I like the concept.
Oops, he's gone. We lost him.
You got to pay the cable bill.
Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
No.
I can hear you.
Now we can hear you. But
wow. So I like the location. I like the concept. I understand the concerns about the retail district. I'm not going to overemphasize it, but I think this is a good time for us to be more open than usual. I understand the basis for ground floor storefronts for physical therapy. It just makes sense, not just from a marketing standpoint, as has been pointed out, but people in physical pain don't want to be trying to go up a narrow flight of steps. So there is a reason Athletico is, and it's on ground floor locations, and it's not just because of marketing. I think it's a kind of experiential thing that is not like going to a lawyer's office, the kind of thing that people will go and are likely to engage in with other businesses. So I think that, yeah, I think it's frankly, it's a relatively small storefront. It's not like the real estate agent situation where you get lots of parking congestion in a short period of time and then no activity outside of that. I could see this being sort of a steady flow, not just with the people that work there, but with the customers. And, you know, look, that's 2 blocks from my house. You know, it's Deadsville there. And I think there's a heavy burden on us to explain, you know, if we turn away really good business concepts like this, I think there needs to be a really significant reason for it. But anyway, I think they meet all the standards. I'm not going to go through all 9 standards. So anyway, that's my view.
Sure. John, I see you're next up.
Yep, great. Like I mentioned, I was at the planning commission meeting, and obviously it was very clear that their biggest concerns were the not meeting the standards for the special use permit. And, you know, obviously that's very subjective sometimes. The presentation tonight, I think, really expanded on those special use standards. And the biggest one that is difficult to play with is number 9, regarding, you know, display windows, facades, signage, lighting, to be compatible with provided, you know, adjacent retail. So if they have a really nicely designed lobby, waiting area, and maybe they have a few things on the wall they sell, my only recommendation is that they do keep their lights on after hours until the restaurants close. So as you're walking down the street, people are intrigued to look in. And going along with the discussion before this application, maybe there's a little window box or a wall box with the services they offer that you can read that. So it all kind of flows. One of the biggest issues was parking at the Plan Commission. Again, I think it's been talked about, and I think I agree with Andy. It's a great spot for the use. A restaurant can go in there with no issue and probably generate more cars and traffic than the proposed use. So I think it's a great location, and I like to see this go ahead. Thanks.
Penny, looks like you're up next.
I appreciate the presentation, and I think that the business would be a great addition to Winnetka. My concern is not really in the parking. I don't have a concern about that because I think that it is the parking generated is in line with other businesses in the area, and it's certainly, I don't think it'd be overly you know, I don't think it would cause any more difficulty in the area than any of the other businesses would. My concern, though, is where in the overlay district this particular business is, and you know, that is speaking to the, you know, our current policy of having a C2 overlay and trying to maintain a core of retail businesses where you are specifically going there to buy something. And the special uses that we have granted for non-retail uses have been more on the periphery. We are in a tough retail environment, and I totally understand that. I just am wondering, you know, if there are other alternatives that are close in. I mean, like to get down on Elm Street, there is a vacancy down at the end, and we granted a special use permit for a dentist's office there. I think there's more space there. So again, it's where this particular space is. It's not that you're in the commercial district, but you're smack in the middle of it. So I just am wondering if there are not, if there is not another alternative space that would be a possibility for you to keep within. And I understand what you're saying relative to being on the first floor. I understand that. And wanting to be close by these other businesses that you think you could generate partnerships with. I don't know if you have spoken with them and actually developed these working relationships. That would be interesting to know. But I do have a reservation about where in the C2 overlay, you know, you're right in the core of that particular use. You know, we may be changing it, you know, relative to where the comp plan comes out, but right now that is our policy. And I, at this time, would support the Plan Commission unless we get more information. So that's where I am right now.
Sure. Bob, you're next up on my screen.
You know, I hear what Penny's saying, and we've struggled with the overlay district, and we've struggled, and we've made exceptions all over the place, quite frankly. And you know what? I think kind of excited about this business actually, and we need to support some of the empty storefront that we have. There's no question about that. I know it's not pure retail, but I think they've made a pretty good case here how they could complement some of the other businesses in the area. Like Andy, it's around the corner from where I live, and I know that street real well, and I don't think this would be a disconnect in that area. So, I would actually support the special use.
Okay, Jack.
I understand the special use, and having been a member of the Plan Commission for years, I understand the arguments against allowing this building to go into the district. But the prior use just before this was, I believe, also a special use, a hair salon, and the number of issues it may have caused with parking and things such as that, it seems to me that this is much less than that, and the number of people who will be using it is less. So I don't see it as having a huge impact. I think the idea about parking being impacted is just that there would be a business coming in that would now have more people than there are now. The business is empty, so obviously there would be an increase. And when it's crowded down there, that would be clearly a problem for finding parking for small periods of time. However, I think it is a small space. I think that if they've found a good spot and they've been looking for a year, it is complementary to the gyms on that street, which again are, I believe, special uses for. So they had to get special uses for that. So the whole special use idea or the overlay district, maybe this is so complementary to those two things, it might actually have a good kind of mix. So I'm in favor of allowing this special use.
Okay. Rob, last but not least.
Oh, thanks for noting that. I'm not going to be redundant on some of the comments. I think they're pretty good. I guess I did have concerns in the parking if I was stacked and folded, where maybe we solve that with where people are coming into, the spots are taken, but if there's some limited use time spaces like 15 minutes where people can get in and get out to serve those retailers that could be the most impacted, I could solve my bigger concerns with it, and I'd be okay.
Right. Well, one thing I want to, relative to the parking, I want to make everybody here aware that as we start talking about phase 3 streetscape, which is going to be along Lincoln and Elm there, that we're going to be reallocating parking spaces that are currently labeled as commuter spaces, which is fundamentally kitty corner from this. We're going to create more shorter term retail spaces that'll be available down Lincoln on the west side of the street where we currently have a lot of commuters. And we're going to continue to shove the commuters to the outer limits in favor of our businesses in the district. So if there is any sort of a parking crunch, hopefully the business owners who have visitors that are going to stay for more than a half hour, 40 minutes, can direct them down to the street to the spaces that we reallocate down there. And obviously, when it comes to employees are required to park, at the very outer limits and obtain permits at a very nominal fee to park in the parking spaces by the community house. So there is some extra parking coming on. I don't know how that feeds into this conversation, but any pressure. Obviously, we have a bigger concern with the available parking based on a big empty building, which is right around the corner right now, but hopefully that'll be a temporary state as well. So Penny, any other follow-ups? I mean,
I'm just sort of stating the purposes for the C2 overlay. As I said, I think this is a good business fit, and I'm hoping that that there is a relationship that's developed, because certainly fitness and health and well-being are, I think, really growing uses in our community, and so I think there's a demand for that. So everything that we can do to make the health and wellness and fitness industry a thriving one in our community is great. So if this use is approved, I really hope that those connections are made and that we go with what seems to be in demand in our community. So.
sure. Well, I will say that Medtail, as a town center landlord, Medtail is the hot thing right now, and obviously it's because they're available. And interestingly enough, the people from communities all over the country seem really interested in having access to it. So we're seeing a lot more of these boutique sort of shops, whether they're fitness or yoga or pain management. It just seems to be where a lot of retail is going these days. And if we can fill up a space and increase our vibrancy a little bit, that doesn't sound like a bad thing to me.
Chris, can I, one more
Sure.
point, I'm sorry. I'd like to back up what John said relative to moving forward with this, to be very specific relative to the front window space. Certainly for uses, non-retail spaces, how those windows actually turn out has been of concern. So we just maybe want to make you all aware of that the sort of the transparency to the street, that's sort of an active site, that's a really important goal for us to keep the street vibrant.
Awesome. Okay, let's see if we can move this along. Is anybody here willing to make a motion regarding either the approval or denial of the special use request?
Excuse me, Chris.
Yes.
We have members of the public
I'm
still
sorry.
on the call, so we should take public comment before a vote, please.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. I apologize to those folks out there in the waiting room. We don't have any sort of a log here that tells me who's here, so I apologize. Go ahead and bring them up.
Okay. Call-in user number 2, calling from 773-391 phone number. Do you have a comment you'd like to add at this time?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, good. I'm worked with, or I've been a client of Delos for several years now, probably 4 or 5 years. I'm a yoga and fitness instructor up in the North Shore in the area. And
Could you identify yourself, please? Hello? Oh, did we lose her?
It looks like you did.
Brian, when they come up, ask them to identify themselves, just name and number.
Okay.
If she pops up, let's put her back in.
We'll circle back to her after we go through a few more of these. Call-in user calling from 847-899 phone number. Could you please give us your name and address if you have any comment on this matter?
yes, this is Terry Jason from 1436 Scott Avenue in Winnetka. I'm also the director of the Winnetka Northville Chamber of Commerce. I was on the Planning Commission meeting, and I can tell you that they have stated their case much better at this meeting. I was very excited to see this business want to be in Winnetka. I think they will be an excellent asset. I will be a customer of theirs, and I am thrilled to hear that, they are a prospective new retailer in our business district. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
Call-in user calling from the telephone number 312-343. Could you give us your name and identify your address if you have any comment on this matter?
Yeah, this is Noah O'Neill. I don't have any comment on it.
Thank you. Dan Burns, do you have any comment you'd like to add at this time?
I do not.
Hi, Dan.
Hi guys.
L. Tillman, do you have any comment you'd like to add on this matter?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. William Hernandez, do you have any comment you'd like to add?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. I am a therapist at Delos Therapy, and I just want to quickly say something about the efforts Mimi and Eric put into the surrounding community where I work. So not only do I witness Mimi and Eric really support the owners, but they empower the owners to grow their businesses, and just to witness their efforts. They train us as therapists to really support our partners, support the neighborhood, whether it's a restaurant or a fitness center. They really push us to guide our clients to try out everything. Our clients definitely have tried out the fitness centers I recommended, restaurants in the building. So the impact that not only Eric and Mimi have helping business owners, but the therapists to, handhold the clients to try out other businesses has been amazing. I really think that we are in the community. I do believe that our impact overall is much greater than what they have expressed this evening.
Great, thank you.
The last one, I think we have the caller that we lost initially. I think we've reestablished contact with call-in user from 773-391. Could you give us your name and address and your comment?
Sherry Weber. I live on Black Hawk Road in Wilmette. And real quickly, as I mentioned, I've been a client of Delos for several years, and I became that way because as Mimi mentioned, with all the partnerships I do, I worked at a yoga studio in the city that they partnered with and encouraged people to go there. So that's how I started. I do work up in this area with both a private client base and a student base, and I sent at least 20 students, private clients, and friends to Delos, all of which would be dying to have this location up here. And I guess just one thing to kind of maybe alleviate the retail concerns is, like Mimi said, the client base is definitely very affluent. They're very interested in wellness, self-care, taking care of themselves. And like Eric alluded to, it's a steady flow of traffic, but never an overabundant amount. But I know in particular my clients and students, I have them from Glenview, Wilmette, Winnetka, Kenilworth, even Lake Forest. And these people would be coming here, and you are in a spot where there is retail. You might run down to J. McLaughlin. You pop over to some of these retail stores. You have lunch at Cafe Aroma or Stacked and Folded. So I think and the base of clients isn't just a one-time stop and shop. They have a continual basis that they maybe come, once or twice a month, or even once or twice a week sometimes. So I think that basis of bringing them into the retail area allows them to really generate revenue in Winnetka versus having them be someplace down the street next to a dentist's office where they do just truly go into the appointment and leave. So I think they have the type of client that you would want to add to Winnetka, and their business is so upscale and inviting. I think it fits right in with that base right there.
Great. Well, thank you, Sherry. We appreciate the comments.
Right.
Anybody else, Brian?
No, that concludes the comments that we have online.
Okay. Well, now we'll go back to my question. Does anybody want to make a motion regarding either the approval or the denial of the special use request?
I'll make a motion that we approve the request.
Just to clarify what the motion is. So because the Plan Commission recommended against, no ordinance was prepared. So the motion would be to direct staff and the village attorney to prepare an ordinance so that you can consider it at your next meeting.
That's good. Thanks.
So
I second that motion.
Okay, Andy, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
You're on mute.
Kristen?
Sorry, I was on mute. I'm adjusting to not being the host. My apologies. Trustee Swerk,
Yes.
Trustee Kreis,
Yes.
Trustee Caladarchi,
Yes.
Trustee Lanfear,
No.
Trustee Apatow,
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn.
Yes.
That motion carries. Thank you. Mimi, we'll see you back next time. You won't have to bring all of your firepower with you. If you and Kirk want to come, that'll be fine.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. We're excited about it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. Excuse me. When it comes back, can that be a introduction and adoption option?
We'll see about that, John. We have to see what the ordinance looks like first.
Okay.
All right, we'll be moving forward then to item B, a resolution number R48-2020, allowing outdoor dining and service of liquor during COVID-19 emergency. This resolution authorizes the village manager to approve additional outdoor dining and service of liquor in outdoor dining areas during the COVID-19 emergency. As you will remember, at one point in time, I had been empowered to do that, but when we let the emergency order expire, I believe the permission to do such expired along with it, and Peter will go ahead and elaborate on that.
No, I think that's exactly right. I think the decision, Chris, that you had made was to try to get back to regular order here as quickly as possible. And so the regular order would have been, had you not had the emergency power to allow the restaurants to do what they're doing, is just to have the council approve it by resolution. So that's what we're doing tonight. We're kind of getting back to as much regular order as we can.
Awesome. Did anybody have any questions for Peter on this? All right, Brian. Any public left?
We do have Ms. Dason in the meeting still. Terry Dason, do you have any comment you'd like to add?
Well, are you trying to say that liquor should be served during COVID outdoors?
It's just extending what we've already permitted, Terry.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. I think we should continue.
And how about L. Tillman?
No comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Awesome. Okay. I'm sorry. Everything on my screen is going prescriptive. Can I have a motion to adopt resolution number R48-2020?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Dearborn,
Yes.
Trustee Kreis,
Yes.
Trustee Apatow,
Yes.
Trustee Lanfear,
You're on mute.
Lanfear,
Yes, yes.
Oh, I hate this. The motion carries, right?
Trustee Caladarchi,
Oh.
Yes.
yes.
Did you get Swerk?
I'm a yes.
You forgot Tom.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. So now we have everyone.
Hey, that's great. Hey, on a more serious note, before I move forward to appointments, there's just one thing I wanted to mention to you guys. And I'd like, if you have thoughts on this, I'd like you to reach out to me, obviously individually, or maybe we can talk and have a cup of coffee. My moving around, come on, Jeff. In my moving around town, actually the other night I was touring and just driving by the restaurants because I like to see activity out in the street and see how people are enjoying it. And I drove by a restaurant that was very active, which I thought was wonderful. However, I recognized that wait staff, the host, and people waiting outside the dining establishment to be seated were all doing so without masks. And, I've really felt that, our community doesn't require a lot of draconian measures in order to get them to go along with what we all know is the right thing. But it really, really bothered me, more so that the wait staff and the host were standing out there in the corner maskless. And, we're extending extraordinary leeway to all of these restaurants and businesses to move out into the public way. And in some cases, they've expanded their businesses way beyond what we ever could have imagined. And look, I'm not one for, any of this ordinance stuff. But I think a message needs to be sent to these, to these store owners that they owe the community a responsibility to behave in an appropriate manner and set an example for how we should be trying to deal with this. Now, I know this whole mask thing has become a political statement in and of itself, but I think the village is bending over backward to facilitate a lot of activity out there. And I think asking for people to, follow CDC regulations just doesn't seem to be a big ask for me. So if you've got thoughts about that, just reach out to me individually. And if we feel that there's a need to maybe send some sort of a simple order out, then maybe that's something we could do at the next meeting. If not, maybe the cops can go out and do it for us. But I do think we need to send a message on that. So anyway, late, long, and this thing, I'm tired of the screen already. All right, I have one appointment this evening, and that is to appoint Max Wygant to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Just so you all know, I've known Max for a couple of years. He's been active in the caucus, and I've spoken to him and met with him. Actually, a couple of years ago, he was very interested in interviewing as a trustee, but because of conflicts more numerous than Andy's, he just didn't feel that he would be able to serve in that capacity. But I found him to be a really bright person. He's an up-and-comer in the community, and I think he would make an outstanding addition to the zoning board, replacing one of our most valued members who, as we all know, passed away recently. So may I have a motion? How does this work?
I think we just have to approve it, don't we?
Yeah, no, you need a motion you're appointed and the council needs to advise and consent.
Okay. May I have a motion to appoint Max Wygant to the Zoning Board of Appeals to fill Wally Greenhouse's remaining term?
I'd like to make that motion. And can I put a little plug in as well? I, met Max through the caucus process, and I just want to say how much I appreciate the fact that that this individual, Max, who was interested in serving as a trustee, recognize the value of experience and the fact that he spent time on the caucus and then is willing to, serve on a board. I think that's just really important in developing leadership for our village. So I just want to commend him for doing that. So I think it's great.
Thanks, Penny. So do I have a motion in a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Lampier,
Yes.
Trustee Swerk,
Yes.
Trustee Caladarchi,
Yes.
Trustee Kreis, did you say yes?
Yes.
There he is.
Trustee Apatow,
A big yes.
Trustee Dearborn.
Yes.
Is that everybody?
That's everybody? Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, guys. All right, item 12, closed session. There is none. And my favorite, item 13, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Here we go again, roll call vote.
Trustee Dearborn,
You betcha.
trustee Apatow,
Yep.
trustee Lampier, trustee Swerk,
Yes.
trustee Kreis,
Yes.
trustee Coladarchi.
Yes.
That motion carries. Thank you, Comcast. We'll see you all next time.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, guys.
Good job, Kristen.
Right.
Good night.